what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Flag Convos and Chips. This is your boy Shevin Ryan here in Phase 2, Corona capital of the world. That's right, people. I'm finally coming out of this lockdown, seeing outside, seeing the sunshine, and enjoying life again. I am joined as ever by some wonderful panelists, guys. Go ahead and let the beautiful people know who you are.
Michael Philander, all the way from Georgetown. I really hope everyone is keeping safe. Mia San Mia.
Hey guys, Brian Straub over here. Hope everyone's doing well.
Omari Joseph, aka the Unspecialist, straight out of Guyana as well. Hope you guys are keeping safe during the pandemic.
That's right, guys. And it's great to have so many faces here again and to realize that there is consistent, regular football from different sources being put on the television every week. And it finally feels like things are coming back to normal. And I know you guys are really appreciating that because I know, Mike, you've been home, just, been bored, trying to work and do stuff like that. How does it feel to see Bayern on TV almost every weekend now?
Well, it's brilliant, and I'm so happy that football came back into my life. My life was just four walls every day, and everything looks very brilliant. Everything looks so red and so nice. It's amazing, and I really enjoy us coming back again for yet another Bundesliga title.
I was just gonna say you were probably happier to see Bayern on TV than Brian was. Brian, I'm gonna rip you guys a new one later on in this podcast, but we'll get there.
Okay, we deserve it. We deserve it.
We'll get there, buddy. We'll get there.
Don't cry, Brian. Don't cry. The red always wins over the black and yellow.
There are no tears. No tears.
Listen, guys.
No tears.
So let's get into it. Since there is football being played in multiple leagues for the first time in about 3 or 4 months, we're here to really get an idea and bearing of where seasons are right now. We're going to tackle the Premier League, La Liga, the Bundesliga briefly, because there isn't much to tackle there, and Serie A, which might have one of the more interesting title races left. So, best place to start is the Premier League, most popular league in the world. Thankfully, came back last week, and I'm sure a lot of people are very happy about that. As unfortunately, I'd like to start off on a sour note with the Premier League. Yesterday in the Burnley Manchester City match, it was a great quality match put on display. City romped to a victory that was, easily indicative of their power and their will over Burnley. Unfortunately, I felt like the match was marred by a bit of a very disrespectful showing at the beginning of the match, where it suggested that a group of Burnley fans chartered a plane to fly a White Lives Matter banner across the sky. Now, we don't usually touch on such sensitive topics, but I feel like it's very important that we do, considering that this is the reality of the world, and unfortunately, this is the way people think. I, for one, would like to see a thorough FA investigation into who these fans are, I should say, and why they felt the need to do this. And I hope there's some sort of action coming out. Sorry to start us off on such a sour note, but I did feel like it was very important to address that, considering what's going on in the world right now. But listen, let's get straight into it. Brian, not much of a title race left, if any, despite Everton holding Liverpool to a very, very, very dull draw. Side note, I cannot believe I wasted time watching that game. But doesn't seem to be much in there. I don't see Liverpool losing. I think they have to lose like 7 of their last 8 games to realistically, make it a challenge. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there. There's definitely no doubt that Liverpool will be champions. I think you'd have to be pretty crazy to think otherwise at this point, considering that gap. I also didn't really watch that game to a great extent, but I
you didn't miss anything. Trust me.
that's what I heard. But from the highlights, yeah, I feel the same way. But I did want to note a little bit about Richarlison. I think he was one of my favorite players on the pitch, despite the fact that he did miss that one big chance that he had. I believe it was in the second half. He was very lively, and it shows that Everton, holding Liverpool to a draw, considering the season that they've had, they've come a long way under Ancelotti. Definitely, an improvement to the first half of their season. But like you said, yeah, like catching Liverpool, I mean, even if they were to lose this game, it would take a complete meltdown for them to not win the title at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty boring to discuss any title charge right now. So, Mr. Omari, I'm going to put you in the hot seat right away, man. Listen, your first appearance on this podcast, I need to know. The biggest thing left to compete for in the Premier League is the golden ticket into the Champions League. Now, right now, we can safely say that Liverpool and Manchester City and Leicester City have locked up their spots. Now, it is worth mentioning that I've said this where the veil around City's ban from the Champions League has yet to be lifted, whether this ban will go forward or whether it will be suspended for a future date. So let's assume that it's still 1-4 getting into the Champions League. Right now, you have Chelsea, Wolves, Manchester United, Sheffield United. Chelsea are only 5 points ahead of Manchester United. Manchester United and Wolves are level on points, and Sheffield United is 1 point behind Wolves and Manchester United. Considering the fixtures to come, and I'll let you know exactly what's going to come for Chelsea because they're the team I want you to laser in on for me. Chelsea's next 3 games are against Manchester City, Leicester City, West Ham United, and then they have a game with Watford after that. Now, I'm pretty sure very controversial to a lot of Chelsea fans, but realistically, I could see them dropping points in every single one of those games. Now, taking into account, any game against City is never easy, despite that they're not playing for anything, and despite the fact that the title is over for them. Then they go on to Leicester City, who is a team that they're right above them. It's going to be a bragging rights game, and Leicester City want to show that they can ramp with the big boys. West Ham and Watford come immediately after that. And these are 2 clubs that we'll get on in a little bit later. These are 2 clubs that are fighting for their survival right now. And games against those kinds of teams are always difficult. Where do you see Chelsea finishing this difficult run? And do you think they can cement that 4th spot?
Believe it or not, I actually think that they can. Manchester City and Leicester, obviously, those 2 games are going to be hotly contested, as most teams basically are just going to try to see how they rank, where they rank among the opposition going into next season. Try to build a confidence. And as you can see, well, Chelsea is clearly going to want to hold on to that 4th spot. So I think they can make it. And what I believe is that they're likely going to lose to Manchester City. However, I think they can hold a draw versus Leicester City, and I'm not quite fond of West Ham's current form. So I also think Chelsea could at least come out with the 3 points there. And then the only concern of the 2 games between West Ham and Watford is that Watford game, as Watford has shown time and time again that they do have the fighting spirit when it comes down to those later games. So I actually think Chelsea could survive that run. They just need to hold their nerve against Leicester City, and I don't think they have too much to worry about when it comes to West Ham.
The West Ham thing is interesting because they did lose the previous game with the Aaron Cresswell winner, I think it was. So, and at that point, West Ham weren't playing for much, but now they're literally playing for their status in the Premier League. So I don't quite agree with you on the West Ham. I'm not saying that they've been playing great because they've been awful to watch, but I think once you get into this survival mode, things can change, and clubs realize the financial gain of staying in the Premier League versus going down to the Championship. So that's why I say it could happen, but just my opinion.
I would like to play devil's advocate as it relates to this here, though, but I believe that there is a chance that Chelsea might drop out, and additionally, Leicester position as well. If you actually look at Leicester's form from since the ending of the beginning of the coronavirus ban to the restart, they're not been playing particularly well. Vardy goals have basically dried up. Madison is not the creative spark that he used to be, but the defense is basically trying to hold them together. And I believe that eventually things are going to start cracking and people are start going to let things through. So I think Leicester is actually up for fair game, in my opinion. Additionally, Liverpool, you have to start looking at Liverpool with a grain of salt because ever since Atletico Madrid beat them, they've been on a horrendous run of form that needs to be really checked. So, do I think that they will not win the Premier League? Probably not. But is it impossible for them to fall? I would never bet against them because of what I've seen before.
Fair enough. All right. So, interesting take there, Mike. I don't know. The whole here's the thing. I'm willing to side with you on this thing because I've looked at the fixtures. Chelsea have a very, very difficult run in. Like I said, with those 4 games that I listed, when you look at Manchester United's run in comparison, there aren't that many difficult games left for United. And I know everybody's going to get on this whole United have struggled against smaller teams, and that's where they've lost a lot of their actual points this season. But I think now with this break, and these players have gotten a chance to re-engage themselves and to recoup themselves over this short break, United have a clear path to this fourth spot, I think. And, also saying, City get banned from the Champions League, fifth place becomes Champions League. And I feel like United right now can do the bare minimum is finish fifth. So I do kind of side with Mike here in saying that Chelsea might fall out of this top four, and United could end up slipping their way in. The big thing for Chelsea, I think, is after this huge, horrid run of fixtures, on the last game day of the season, they play Wolves. Now, whether or not that's going to actually end up being a straight shot for the final qualification spot is going to be interesting to see, because I would love a situation like that. Chelsea and Wolves level on points, Chelsea 1 point ahead, something like that. Wolves go to, I think they're going to Stamford Bridge and steal the win. Oh my God, the scenes. But quickly, Brian, I want to know, where do you see Sheffield United coming into this? Because we've dedicated a lot of time talking about two of the big teams, Chelsea and United, and a team that we've all come to expect great things from, Wolves. Sheffield United are in the Premier League for their first season, and they're only 1 point behind this Manchester United side that we're talking about as having an easy run in. Sheffield don't have particularly difficult fixtures left, but it is concerning to me that since this restart, and I've looked at their games, they've looked listless, they've looked jaded, and they don't seem to have that same cohesiveness to them that they had before. Do you think that this break came at the wrong time for Sheffield United?
I think it came, at the wrong time for every team that had any sort of level of momentum, right? You have a stop in play for 2 to 3 months. Form is definitely going to dip. That goes for every team, including Liverpool or Sheffield or whoever you're talking about. With regards to them after the restart, from what I understand, they weren't necessarily the luckiest when it comes to their game against Villa, I believe it was, where they dropped some points that could have been pretty important to them qualifying for that final spot. But I also do think that it's still a little early to say. They could always come back in the next game roaring. Like you said, they don't have the hardest of run-ins necessarily, right? So there's always time for them to still come back. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Going back to that game that you mentioned, Wolves versus Chelsea, though, that's definitely going to be one that I'm going to be watching. That's going to be very interesting because Wolves have been in really fine form overall this season. And I do think that they do have the quality to, for example, provide Chelsea with a problem in getting that last spot there.
I get you. Now listen, I'm here to make a case. I don't come in unprepared. Omari, hear me out, man. United plays Sheffield United tomorrow. This is an opportunity for them to give themselves a little bit of a buffer, or concede a lead to Sheffield United, or everything stays the same with the draw. We'll see. Now, after that game, United next face Norwich City, Bournemouth, and Aston Villa within the next 4 games, because there is another game in there with the mid-table team that I didn't write down. But they're literally playing 3 teams who are battling relegation within their next 5 games. Sounds like 9 pretty easy points. Now, these games coincide with that difficult Chelsea run I mentioned. So you can see why I feel like it's very, very easy for United to slip ahead of Chelsea, where the Blues might come up short on those trips and actually stumble down the table, which is why I feel like Michael agreed with me and he felt like the same thing might happen. I don't know if he's saying United will do it, but I'm saying that based on the next 5 games that are coming up, we could see a dramatic turnaround between 4th and 6th right now.
True. My initial take was definitely isolated, looking only at Chelsea. But yes, considering the matches that Manchester United have to play, yeah, it's more likely for them to pick up those 9 points compared to Chelsea in the same position. But at the same time, Manchester United still has to exercise some of the ghosts of their previous fixtures with at least 2 of those teams. I believe one of them being Norwich City. So, especially given the break as well, as Brian mentioned, it wasn't good for any team. But for some reason, I'm just gonna go with my gut here. I'm still thinking that Chelsea would be able to hold on to that 4th spot just by the skin of their teeth, given the cushion that they have currently.
Mike, I don't know. How do you feel about, because you being a Spurs fan got a great close up look at them in the game back. How do you feel like they've looked since the return? Do they look sharper? Do they look better? Is the Bruno Fernandes effect still there, or has the honeymoon period happened to wane off during the break? Have teams sort of used this time to figure out a way to defend him and how to properly execute traps around him?
Well, you see, the sample size is very small because Manchester United played Tottenham, and that was basically their only fixture. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a situation whereby like teams are starting to figure anybody out as yet, because it's only now that Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba would be playing together, which is a very interesting duo because of their skill sets and so on. And I would expect that they had a lot of creativity with the two of them potentially start. And I know Pogba came on and changed the match against Tottenham when they were playing. But I must say that you have to give certain system time. I don't believe in Ale as a technical person. I believe that he probably just puts a team out and whatever happens, happens. I don't really see a lot of the tactical side of him. So I guess we'll have to just have a wait and see approach. But as overall, when you look back at all the teams, at least the first match, you could clearly see that there's a hint of tiredness. But I must say that as it relates to Spurs, it looks like Jose Mourinho started to sort out the defense, which is something that I really like. The match against West Ham is testimony to them actually sealing up defense, because that was the fifth clean sheet of the season. That's how poor the defense was, and to only concede one against Manchester United, who were basically running around as like a Robin Hood of the Premier League, actually beating the bigger teams and then losing to the smaller teams. It was impressive.
Right. Interesting. I'm glad to see that somebody who had a close-up look can give a fair assumption of what he thought about where this United team is heading and how they look. Now, top four race is great. Champions League golden ticket, bam, bam, bam. The last big thing left to play for in the Premier League is status of being a Premier League team. Now, we know three teams will go down, and I've looked at the current breakdown from Brighton all the way to Norwich City and the games that these teams still have left. There's a lot here, guys. And I've heard a lot of people say on podcasts that I listen to, or panelists say that Norwich City are relegated already. I don't think so. There's still 7 or 8 games to play for, depending on which team you are. And Norwich are only 6 points outside of safety. That's a lot of games for quite a few points to be made up. Anyway, let me make my case though. Coming in at 15th, you have Brighton on 32, 16th, Watford 28, West Ham 27, Bournemouth 27, Villa 26, and then Norwich bottom of the pack with 21. Now, there are some big games that I'm going to discuss with you guys that might be coming up, but it is key to note that there really is only an 11-point difference between 20th and 15th. With that amount of games, a lot can still happen. I just want to quickly get into the important games that I've highlighted. On the 7th of July, Watford play Norwich City. On the 11th of July, West Ham play Norwich City. So Norwich already has 2 games against the bottom seed dwellers in quick succession. On the final day of the season, and this could be really fun, guys. You have West Ham and Aston Villa head to head. Now, at this point, they're only separated by 1 point. But so I don't know what's going to happen on the 26th, but I would love to see a straight shootout for survival, basically a playoff to stay in the Premier League on the 26th. Based on what you guys have watched, who do you think out of this list I've mentioned is the safest and why?
Well, what happens normally? I judge every single thing off of defenses. I really believe that we're going to see a little shock in the end, because I think that Bournemouth Bournemouth will surpass West Ham, and West Ham will actually be relegated this season. This is definitely an outside chance, but I really think it's fairly possible for it to happen, because West Ham themselves is like in a state of capitulation, and I don't really see a lot coming out from them because their defense is poor and their attack is poor. So it makes absolutely no sense what is going to happen. It makes absolutely no sense for them to stay up, in my opinion, because it's basically Declan Rice is the only player that is actually playing well right now for West Ham. Izzy Diop and so on have been poor, and it was not expected to be in this manner for them, because I know Izzy Diop was actually very talented in the recent season as a centre back. I think he was actually linked to Manchester United. But we'll have to wait and see. It will be sad to see Norwich drop because of the type of football they play. It's really entertaining, really beautiful. But I guess it's a necessary evil.
So who do you think was the safest then?
Well, if I was to count on safest, I it's going to be a very difficult task because I still I favor better defenses. And even though Bournemouth is actually in the relegation battle, I think that
You, th-
Bournemouth will come out.
you think they're more safe than Brighton, who are already on 32 points?
Yeah, well, definitely Brighton is in a way better position, but I'm looking at the persons who are in immediate danger of relegation. I don't
Oh,
really
okay,
consider
I get you.
Brighton too much to be in the relegation dark fight. They're 3 points above, but there's a very tight race between West Ham,
I
Norwich.
get you from West
Uh,
Ham all the
yeah,
way down to Norwich. Then,
yeah.
yeah. Interesting. I mean, I would feel bad for West Ham if they went down because they would. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they would probably lose 9 out of 11 players in their starting 11 if they
I
actually
actually
went down
won't.
to the championship.
I actually won't. Just saying.
I mean, I'm not, I'm not here to champion for West Ham, but they would lose a lot of players. Allaire, Felipe Anderson, Diop, Declan Rice, um, there's Mikel Antonio probably would go as well. So they would stand to lose us. They would essentially start over in the championship, which in turn could have a kick-on effect for them because they might even end up being relegated from the championship based on the fact that they're bringing in a lot of players with no chemistry. But that's just where I stand.
I know a team who'd decide to go for them too if Newcastle decide to get their new ownership going or
Interesting.
whatever.
I
So who
see. I
knows?
see. Yeah.
But as regards to relegation and all that stuff, I know you were trying to be a little positive for Norwich there, Chev. But from what I can see from their run-in, I don't really have much hope for them, especially because they're gonna have to play the likes of Chelsea, Man City, and United, all of which are in that last race to stay up there in those top spots. So I feel Norwich. I think they're just gonna be bogged down, honestly, when it comes to their survival. I don't think they have much of a hope. I know they've been seen kind of as like the giant killers sometimes in the Premier League because they had some pretty interesting results against some of the higher up teams, but I think this is a bit of a reach for them at this point.
So who do you think is probably the most safe from Watford down to Norwich? So let's say Brighton are safe for argument's sake.
Well, when it comes to them, if I look at the quality, just off pure quality of the team, I think West Ham can still pull it off. Just because they do have enough big names and enough decent players in there to I believe weather the storm. Bournemouth, from what I understand, haven't had the greatest of seasons. Been downright tragic. Watford, I know also spent a very long streak of games without a win. That's also another team to look at when it comes to players that might be moving on, especially if they're relegated. So I have a feeling the only team that I can be sure of is Norwich. But I do think that West Ham has a good chance of staying up.
Interesting.
Well, in my previous comments when we were talking about Chelsea's run, I did mention that I wasn't a fan of West Ham's form. However, looking at the teams from Watford going down and considering their remaining matches, I actually think that West Ham would be able to survive by the skin of their teeth, especially being that they would be motivated, if not the players, definitely ownership and management, by the fact that, yes, they probably have the most to lose of any of the teams currently in that position. So I would say by no means they are the safest. I would actually say that Watford might be in a much better position than them, given that Watford has at least proven that when in seasons past, when they've been put in tight spots, that they could pull off some results against bigger teams. So maybe they can channel some of that magic again. But definitely I think West Ham can survive. It's not looking too good for Norwich or for Aston Villa, particularly Norwich, because I think a lot of persons have been enchanted by the image of them being giant killers and have forgotten that I think they've scored the least goals of anybody in the league, and they also are not on a good run of form. So I don't want to be that bad guy and say it's a foregone conclusion that they're relegated, but I don't think there's much hope for them to make it out. There is some chance for Aston Villa, but just like I said with Norwich, they run a form and they haven't shown recently that they're capable of getting those goals, especially in tight moments. So I'm gonna say West Ham is gonna survive. Bournemouth is gonna make a push, but they're not gonna make it. And I think Watford is also gonna hold a position in the league.
Interesting. Listen, Norwich City fans, if you listen to this podcast, my Twitter handle's there. We can talk, guys. I think you can do it. I definitely think you can do it. I love to see a great escape like that. But yeah, as far as where I think, what happens on the 7th, the 11th, and the 26th will tell a lot, because we're microcosming this relegation battle onto just those games because they are against each other. But there are games that these teams have to play against upper mid-table teams, mid-table teams, and then some of the big boys as well. So nothing's a foregone conclusion right now. If you ask me who I think is going now, I think Bournemouth are going down. It's not something I like to say because I'm a big fan of Eddie Howe. They've always played great football over the years and stuff like that. But I think this is the year. I My heart says Norwich, but being a realist, I do see them going down as well. So that's 2 of the 3. For the third team that goes down, it sounds bad. I want it to be West Ham, and I think it actually might be Villa, but I want it to be West Ham. Just getting that out there. So West Ham fans, don't ignore the whole Twitter handle thing from earlier. But yeah, that's where I think it's gonna finish. And there's a lot of big games to look forward to in the Premier League, both for the top 4 race and for the relegation scrap. But listen, that's a lot on the Premier League. Let's shift gears.
Whoa, hold on, Chev. You forgot to talk about one team.
Oh, my God.
Yes. We can't leave talking without talking about Arsenal.
So Brian wants me to talk about Arsenal, right?
I do want you to talk about Arsenal. Let's go.
There's not much to say, right?
There's so many things to say, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
This has realistically been one of the worst seasons I've ever experienced as an Arsenal fan, right? And honestly, that's a very high bar to beat, but it's up there, dog. Like this is the anti-invincible season, Like if such a thing would exist, if they gave us like an upside down Premier League trophy, we would be giving it for this season. Where do I begin? Like, okay, I'm gonna be positive about it, and I'm gonna say what the path forward is rather than dwelling on what's going on right now. I would say a solid 55% of the squad needs to go. And some of them need to go because they're not good enough or too old. And then some of them need to go because it's the right thing for them, for their careers. And I'm talking about Aubameyang, I'm talking about Lacazette. And the not good enough are the David Luiz's, the Mustafi, the Rob Holding, the Kolasinac. There's a lot of work to be done with the squad, and it's only going to be fixed over a number of years. It doesn't happen instantly. And I think starting right now, a lot of us fans need to reassess our expectations and evaluations of this team. We just need to realize that right now where this squad is, it's not good enough, and the good players in our squad are suffering. And I just want to spend like an extra couple seconds focusing on 2 players, David Luiz and Guendouzi. These are 2 players I've come to despise in these last couple of days, and for very, very different reasons, right? To say I despise David Luiz is bad. He's a horrible footballer, but he is a nice guy, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in saying that, listen, he might be shit at football, but at least he tries to not be shit. Like I don't think he could help it that he is shit, yes, but at the end of the day, he does give a concerted effort. And he does do something of the sort. It might not be good. Guendouzi, on the other hand, he just strikes me as the most privileged, spoiled brat I have ever seen play for Arsenal. This is a kid, mind you, who has not achieved anything in his career. He hasn't achieved leaps and bounds at Arsenal either. He played some good football under Emery last year, but that was about it. This guy, I told someone this yesterday. Guendouzi, every single time he steps on the pitch, his mouth writes a check that his ass can't cash. You need to shut up. You need to try to focus, learn positional discipline, and learn how to properly screen a back line. Spend all of next season not getting into fights. Do not get into tussles. Do not talk back to players. Work on your craft before you try to insert yourself into situations like that. Because you're not good enough where the fan base is going to back you in bust-ups with other players. You're just not. Stop it. But, it's a very heated. I tried to be positive. I realized I tailed off into not being so positive, but that's Arsenal Football Club for you.
Well, even though I would like to mull in what is going on at Arsenal for obvious reasons, I must say that Arsenal needs a lot of things to come out of this mess that they're in. Firstly, over the last few years, as when you look at their signings, it's a clear sign that they lack direction. And me saying that they lack direction is that when you're going to buy Torreira and Guendouzi, you were basically the same type of player in one window with around the same age, is a sign that you're possibly building for the future. But then when they follow that window up by buying Nicolas Pepe for 70 odd million, you're still saying that they're building for the future. But you're going to sign David Luiz. You can't be building for the future when you sign David Luiz. It makes absolutely no sense. So the first thing that they need is direction. If they're going to say that they're going to decide to build for the future, ensure that every single power that you have set out is for building for the future. Every single player that you bring in is for building for the future. Additionally, with the position that Arsenal is in, they can't necessarily go into a full rebuild, but at least have some quality with the signs that you do. If I was in Arsenal position, I would have been looking at teams like Paris Saint-Germain and so on and starting to pick at anybody who they're actually having to move on. Like, for instance, Munier would have been a great signing for Arsenal because they don't really have a proper right back. If anything, I don't really trust in Bellerin because of the injuries that he's had over the
Yeah,
season.
I definitely don't disagree with
Of
that.
Saka, who is somebody who just came into the team having to know, and I mind you, as a winger, having to now fit in that position. And it's very difficult for the whole team to work cohesively. And in addition to that, there's absolutely a big lack of creativity in the midfielders as I could see it, but you can't necessarily use Ozil because if you give Ozil a chance, you're going to take so much out from your defense that it's going to be criminal because Ozil refuses to put in any defensive work. I think a lot of it also starts with getting rid of the deadwood, and there's a lot of deadwood to clear. But the problem that Arsenal ends up in now is that who are going to buy those players, how poor they are, and the type of wages that they're not going to settle for less. So it's an entire problem, but it's a problem that I like Arsenal to have, being a sports fan. I really hope that this year is the next season that we finish above you. I think today marks 1,500 days since you guys last finished above us. Just want to see.
Interesting.
Jeez, that that last comment hurts. But I'm not going to talk too much because I'm not one to talk. I know you're going to be trying to tear me a new one in a little bit anyway. So I'll try and be brief. I do agree with a lot of what you've already said with regards to what Arsenal needs to do. There's a lot of players that need to be moved on. You're not going to be happy to hear this, but apparently David Luiz did sign an extension today.
Oh my God.
So I can hear you're thrilled. I can hear you're thrilled. But that's once again another example of what you guys are talking about, right? You have a team that's trying to send a message of youth, and we're trying to rebuild and all that. Meanwhile, you're signing players like David Luiz, who are chronically known to make mistakes and not necessarily the best player to build around. Just because of the fact that he just has that reputation, and just you could see from his performances this season that he hasn't been the signing that Arsenal has needed. What I would have done, I would have let the contract run out. I don't think it would have been a good idea to keep him around for much longer. You guys do have Saliba out on loan. He's a fantastic defender. He's going to be coming back next season. He needs time to play. So it's a little weird to see that David Luiz is signing again, especially because, you guys do have other experienced defenders, which are, maybe not exactly in their prime like Socrates, but I think he's still several levels above Luiz and someone that can kind of guide the youngsters in the right direction. With regards to what you said about Aubameyang, I 100% agree as well. I do think he needs to move on at this point. Not to say that, he hasn't been your guy's best player. He has, 100%. It's just at this point, like you said, for his career and all that, it's something that he just needs to move on. Arsenal needs to move those wages and sign some players that can actually help them in the here and now, or moving towards the future, rather. There are a bunch of youth players that can kind of take that role. I wouldn't sell both Aubameyang and Lacazette, though, just because you still do need that sort of level of maturity within the squad. And I do think Lacazette.
The reason I said that is because Lacazette does have a lot of value. So it is, if financially the club feels like the best decision is to recoup a ton of money and then reinvest as a whole, he is one of our more lucrative options.
And you'll still get that money off of the likes of Aubameyang. Maybe not as much necessarily because of the age, but you'll still get a fair amount. And I don't know. Honestly, it's tough. But I do think that Arteta is the right man for the job. I think you guys finally have the right coach. It's just a matter of letting him work now and not having the board make as many decisions as they have in the past.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and just to basically add and echo a lot of the sentiments, and I'm sure a lot of Arsenal fans might agree with me that Arsenal has actually been one of the most or more disappointing teams in the Premier League this season. 13 draws, only 9 wins. That's the least among anybody in the top 10. And if I'm being honest, that's pretty much a sign of their lack of direction, as you guys have alluded to. So what I do think, definitely this transfer window, they're going to have to look long and hard at that roster, at that team list, and think about their direction and actually have a serious vision, because I do agree that Arteta is the coach for them. Most of the problems I see in the team are with the players and just their performances on the pitch. So definitely they have to do some housekeeping, and hopefully they can come back better next season, and we can see Arsenal Fan TV actually making some positive videos next year.
Robbie, I'm tired, man. I'm tired. Anyway, listen, as I was saying before, my panelists decide to drag me back into the depths of Arsenal Football Club. Moving on to La Liga, where there's a very interesting title race brewing. There is a very interesting relegation race brewing, and there is an interesting top 4 race. Well, 2 positions actually instead of 1. Let's start with the title. That's the easy one. Big boys, Barcelona, Real Madrid. I'm only an hour and a half removed from the completion of the Barcelona game. Luckily got a win. It was very scrappy, but we got the result. That puts us 3 points ahead of Real Madrid. But Real Madrid do have a game in hand against Real Mallorca, which they should win pretty easily. So that does put us level on points again, and they go above based on the superior head-to-head. Now, I just want you guys to quickly tell me, who do you think is going to win this La Liga title and why? Just for some context, up next, Barcelona have Celta Vigo away, who, despite battling relegation, has been historically difficult for us, especially at their away ground. After that, we come up against Atletico Madrid. Meanwhile, Real Madrid, in their next couple of games, play Real Mallorca, Espanyol, who are at the bottom of the table, Getafe, Bilbao, Deportivo Alaves, Granada, and their only serious game left for this season after Getafe is Villarreal away. Now, it does paint the picture that Barcelona have a much more difficult run-in the next 4 games at least. Real Madrid, realistically, from my book, only have 3 banana peel games left. Mike, based on what's going on right now, looking at squads, looking at how the teams have been playing and how they've recovered or not recovered since this break, who wins La Liga and why?
This here is a very tight question, I must say, because of all of the things that you have to take into consideration. I personally think that Real Madrid will win it this season because I believe that Real has had the better defense. Barcelona has been extremely dependent on Messi to facilitate every single thing. And I don't believe in teams that are extremely dependent on a single person to save them all the time. So I do believe that Real will pull it off. There have been good signs with Real. Hazard's come back brilliantly, I must say. And the team is actually starting to play really good together. There are clear signs that they're gelling and so on. Even though the result against their last result a bit sketchy. I must
Don't start me up. I've already been started up on Arsenal. Don't start me up on Real Madrid.
yeah, so but I believe that Real would pull it through. And this year would be like a good icing on Zidane's cake because it would signal that he has won every single thing, which
Yeah.
from a manager that I personally don't rate, I must say that he's inherited a very good team, and that's probably the reason why he's been on this good run in the Champions League. It's really nice to add to his spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the whole Messi dependence thing, it's been that way for like 3 years in a row now. And to put stock in it, we have won La Liga in 2 of those years. So I'm not saying that it's easy to do now, especially with the head-to-head against us, unfortunately. But Messi Dependica has sort of worked out, but I do understand what you're saying in that this year might be a step too far, considering that they have such a superior squad to call on, or at least a squad that plays better together. But just my take.
Yeah. With regards to the title race, I'm gonna have to agree with Mike. I do think that Madrid is definitely gonna, well, not definitely because it's not definite. That gap in points is still there, but I think it's likely for them to pull it through. Just looking at the run-ins, like you mentioned, Barcelona's run-in is a little bit more difficult, and I think a lot's gonna hinge on that Atletico Madrid game. And I think, with Madrid also fighting for one of those top places so that they can be in Europe as well, that's going to be tricky. So it's going to be something to watch. So I think, like I said, a lot depends on that result specifically. And I like you guys have been saying, I do think Madrid has been playing a little bit better, especially in the second half of this season. So that's my quick take.
Well, for me, there's not much contrary for me to say either. I mean, although Barcelona has been the highest scoring team between the two, Real Madrid and Barca, Real Madrid has shown that they're able to keep a clean sheet a bit more reliably than Barcelona. And to be honest, with the head-to-head in their favor as well,
Let me
I
just
think,
Let me just cut in on you real quick.
okay,
We've played 4 games since we came back. We've yet to concede a goal. Just saying. Just painting that picture, Omari.
true.
I'm just kidding. I'm
Now
just a
that's what I was
salty.
about to get to. No, that
I'm
was
just a salty
what I was about
Barcelona
to get
fan.
to.
Don't worry.
Their form coming into after the break, they have shown to themselves to be more impressive than Real Madrid, especially given the VAR controversy with the last game. So what I can say is if Real Madrid is not able to recover the same level of chemistry that they had prior to the break due to COVID-19, we're definitely not going to see them lifting that trophy. It all comes down to if the team is able to get it together, coming down to the end of the season. But all things considered, things do seem to be in their favor. So I would give edge to Real Madrid.
Interesting. Listen, if we lose this title on head-to-head, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to be so pissed off because in 2013-14, when we could have won on head-to-head against Atletico Madrid, I was like, yeah, I love head-to-head, screw goal difference. And now coming back to bite me in the ass. Anyway, moving on to the UCL race in La Liga, the top 2 spots are definitely sewing up. There are 2 spaces up for grabs. Right now, with their win today, Atletico Madrid actually went above Sevilla to 55 points. Now they're 2 points ahead of Sevilla into 3rd place. Now, Sevilla are 2 points back, and then further back from Sevilla, 3 points behind, are Getafe and Villarreal. Do you guys think it's just another year of a foregone Barca, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid 1, 2, 3, or can Sevilla cause a little bit of an upset here and sneak into third with Atleti finishing fourth? Could you see Getafe actually pipping Atletico Madrid, considering that Atleti have not been all that impressive this year? They look like a team caught between two styles. They're misfiring. They're not scoring enough goals anymore. Joao Felix has not settled in properly. Could this be the year that we see Diego Simeone's shine start to rub off?
Well, personally, I believe that Diego Simeone, the Atletico team that he actually created this season, was built for attack with signings of persons like Trippier and also the more attacking Joe Felix and so on. But I thought this would have signaled a change in the way of how Diego Simeone actually played, but he remained stubborn. And the problem is that he gave up a lot of these dogmatic players who were very scrappy and so on for a little bit of more elegance. And I don't think it worked out how he had envisioned. I know I would consider João Felix a flop this season because of the production that he's actually given compared to the price tag that was attached to him. But it is indeed his first season in a team like Atletico Madrid, and expectations would have been very large because of the price tag. But it leaves Simeone in a very precarious situation as to now, because it's like he's trying a lot of different things, but nothing isn't working. The loss of Antoine Griezmann too has been incredible because the goal scoring and so on is just gone. It's just vanished, just like that. The defense is still there, but the goal scoring is gone. But I must add that the race in La Liga for top four has been incredibly tight. In fact, I think up to the 10th place team can realistically have a chance at making it to the Champions League, because
Yeah, they
there's
could.
a lot of
They
points.
could. Bilbao are actually only 7 back of Getafe, and they're like I said, there's still 7 games to go. 7.7 games is not impossible. Well, yeah, it's pretty tight. But I think the couple I mentioned are the ones that are most likely going to contend.
Yeah, but I think that it really adds a lot, gives it a lot more credence to La Liga because of the competitiveness. Because bar in the top two, it has been probably one of the more competitive leagues in the entire Europe. So with that in mind, I can see that there is, if anything happens with Atletico Madrid between the next two seasons, I can't see them falling farther behind, because there isn't any clear cut. I really believe that it's probably time for Atletico to let go of Diego Simeone, because clearly his methods have started to dwindle. They're not really working how they used to work before, because football itself is, as we know, dynamic, and every single thing is progressive. And I don't think Diego Simeone is really keeping up with that. It's the same conundrum that Mourinho experienced a few years ago, and I'm really hopeful that a lot of what he did has actually changed. But Diego Simeone needs to adapt to the new situation, and the attempt that he actually made backfired.
Yeah, I mean, like Mike said, I agree with a lot of what he said in terms of both Simeone's method and Atletico's performances hampering them this season. Once again, the top four race is definitely going to hinge back on that game that I talked about, Barcelona Atletico. Depending on who wins that, if Atletico can pull off a result, then perhaps that could spur them on to beat the other teams that they have in their run-in. But if they do lose points in that game, and they do still have to play Getafe, I believe, the second to last game of the season, if they lose that game and stumble like they have for the rest of the season, and a couple other games, there's still 100% chance that Getafe could jump them into a higher place. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
What I can say is, looking at the La Liga table, yeah, it's definitely competitive. And seeing some of the games coming out of the COVID break, I would say as well too that La Liga has been, for the most part, exciting. So what I can say is, yes, Atletico is caught between two styles. We're definitely seeing that although the signings suggest they're trying to play more expansive and free-flowing football, the Simeone influence is still there. But I do think that they can hold out because they have been getting results, especially over the last 10 games in the league. Again, we have to consider the break. The break would disrupt things. So overall, I would say though, if Sevilla is able to capitalize on their run of matches coming up, the next 3 or 4 matches, and Atletico slips maybe once or twice, then I can see them leapfrogging. But for some reason, I don't think so. I think Atletico can survive.
It's worth mentioning that Atleti do have to play Barcelona sometime in their next 4 games. So at Camp Nou, even if there's no fans, maybe home advantage still counts for something. So it is something to keep in mind. So I do agree with most of you guys in saying that Sevilla could actually push in front of them. Although I do think those two teams are going to round out the top 4, Sevilla and Atletico. But it's just a matter of can Sevilla actually break this pride thing Atleti have had. Moving forward, though, relegation in La Liga is just as exciting as as every other aspect of La Liga. Boys, come on. I feel like we could chalk La Liga up to being the best season this year, despite the whole break and the whole split in time and everything. Based on everything, I feel like it could be La Liga. But here's why: relegation, we go all the way to I think it's 14th place. Let me just see. Sorry, 15th place. Real Valladolid 33 points. Celta Vigo 30, Eibar 29, Mallorca 26, Leganes 25, Espanyol, or as I know, Espanyol, because I'm a Barcelona fan, with 24. This is very, very tight actually, considering that there's only a 9-point gap between 15th and 20th, which is an even smaller gap than in the Premier League when we did Brighton versus Norwich City. And there's some big names or some staple names in this relegation fight. Celta, Eibar, and Espanyol especially, who have shocked the entire Spanish football scene by being this bad this season. I'm gonna hit you guys same way I hit you in the Premier League. Based on what you've seen, who's safest? Let's take Valladolid out, considering that they're 15, so they might be safe already. Nothing's given though. Celta, Eibar, Mallorca, Leganes, Espanyol. In that order. That's a 6-point gap from 20th to 16th. Who's safest and why?
Well, it's fairly tight as you mentioned before, but I'll actually favor Celta. I believe Celta has the pedigree to stay up. Um, Additionally, Celta has been the best defense out of those teams. As I said before, I favor teams with a stronger defense to actually pull out of these situations here. So I definitely say Celta out of the relegation battle.
I'm gonna go ahead and say the same. I know I'm gonna sound like someone who doesn't really have faith in the underdog story, which is not true. But I think that Espanyol and Leganes, just looking at their run-in and everything, that they're foregone conclusions. I do believe that they're going to go down. Espanyol has to face the likes of Barcelona, Betis.
They also play
Madrid,
they play Real Madrid.
Yeah. They play some pretty high profile teams up there. So I do think that it's a little too far too late for them. But Celta, like Mike said, they definitely do have the quality, and he mentioned defense, but they do also have, I think the players up top and the highest firepower out of the teams in the relegation zone, just with the likes of Santimina, Smolov, Nolito, etc. So yeah, I'm gonna say Celta as well.
Oh, that Nolito signing was hilarious. Like, okay, listen, I know
They're
Leganes are
supposed to sign
probably
a keeper, and they sign a
they
forward.
signed
It
Nolito.
doesn't make any sense, but
listen,
he assisted them on the weekend, so
I know Barcelona might single-handedly be responsible for Leganes being in this relegation fight, considering that we took Martin Braffett from them. So I'm not one to like mock Celta for doing it. But how can the rule, to my understanding, is if a player in a particular position gets injured and you can't make subtle adjustments from your squad, you're allowed to sign a player from the Spanish league or a free agent outside of the window. Ousmane Dembele went down. We signed an attacking player. Great. The rule sucks. It should be abolished, but it's a rule. We used it. Great. How does your goalkeeper get injured and you sign a striker / winger? I don't understand it. It's crazy, and that might keep them up. That might be one of the reasons they stay up.
You see,
Um,
that's the reason why those type of rules need to be thrown away immediately.
yeah, it's a
Because
horrible rule.
it
I didn't even
creates
know it existed up until this season. So
it creates the environment for people to start abusing that system.
My biggest problem with it wasn't that we signed Braffet, was that Leganes applied to La Liga to sign a player to replace him, and they said no. I just think it's nonsense at that point, and the rule has to be struck from the record this summer.
Well, I'm just gonna agree with everyone else concerning.
Oh, come on. Listen, that's not why I brought you on this podcast. That's not why we brought you on this podcast. No, I'm joking.
No,
Go, go,
hold
go.
on. Let me explain.
you're the
Okay.
I do
controversial
think
one, Chev. So
That's
I
true.
do think that A-Bar can pull off an upset. However, looking at the defensive record, I'm not too confident. Although compared to Celta, I do believe that they have an easier run of matches coming down to the end of the season. But given the defensive track record as well as the attacking talent compared to Celta Vigo, I honestly, on paper and based on form, I honestly think it's almost a foregone conclusion that Celta is gonna survive.
Okay, interesting. Just special thoughts to Eibar, who were almost relegated. They actually were relegated their first season in La Liga when they came up, and I remember they ended up staying in La Liga because another team, I believe it was Cordoba, had a financial crisis at the time, so they had to be put into administration, which leads to forced relegation. So seems like they're getting to that point where the road is coming to an end. Just a big match on hand. Eibar play Espanyol on the 12th of July, so that could be a big decider in seeing where either of these teams finish. Will Espanyol rediscover their glory and their pedigree? So very very quickly, it's very brief because there isn't much to discuss. But Bundesliga, I don't have much to say. Everything's a foregone conclusion. I think the only thing really up for debate is the last Champions League spot between Mönchengladbach and Leverkusen. But very, very quickly, Mike, Brian, you're our in-house Bundesliga specialist. Is there anything you guys want to add?
I'll let the guy who's probably the more depressed go first.
Oh my god.
well, hold on there, guys. Let's not jump the gun necessarily. I'm not really depressed. That would be a bit of an extreme way to go about it. If we're gonna talk about the source of my depression, quote unquote, for a moment, then there isn't all that much to be said about it. Was it disappointing to let the second title chance slip? Yeah, it was. Not gonna lie. Was it unfortunate to see the mentality the team showed at certain points in the season? Yeah, it was. It wasn't great. But there's an important caveat to talk about here. The team is still very much on the rise and improving, and that's basically what matters at this point in time. You can't build something overnight with any team, for that matter. Klopp took years, so Favre can too. Over the past 3 seasons, we've gone from 64 goals scored, for example, to 81, and then to 84 this year. We've consistently conceded less, 47, 44, 37, respectively. And our goal difference has increased over each of these last 3 years from 17 to 37 to 47. All steps in the right direction. We've come a long way. I have to say, like from having the likes of Andre Schürrle play week in, week out, we now have Julian Brandt. We have Torgan Hazard. These are improvements. We're not completely there yet, but I think a full season of Haaland and Chan, as well as the other signings gelling, could 100% make the difference. And I think that next season could be our year. And I know I say this, or I feel like Dortmund fans in general say, better luck next year a lot. But I do want to be positive, and I do want to think that with the right changes and with the right steps that we're making, potentially a couple new signings coming in, we can do better, and we can hopefully finally dethrone Bayern. Now looking at the last Champions League spots, the race for those two between Gladbach and Leverkusen, they're separated by 2 points. The former, Gladbach, plays Hertha Berlin, who've kind of been on the rise under Bruno Labbadia since he took over, and could prove a sterner test for Gladbach than Leverkusen, who have to face Mainz, who've been fighting relegation all season basically. That being said, though, Mainz is technically already safe, but I wouldn't put it past them to pull one over Leverkusen, which have been great on the attacking end, but still have some defensive frailties for sure. Mainz beat Dortmund a couple match days ago, almost to ensure their safety. So they could pull the same thing on Leverkusen, like I'm saying. Plus, Leverkusen do have the Pokal against Bayern to worry about, so the heads might actually already be in Berlin for that game. So I'm gonna go with Gladbach making fourth. I think they're the team that will have what it takes to retain that spot over Leverkusen. But both teams will be very fun to watch, I think, come next season, especially with Gladbach if they get their new signings or the signings that they're trying to make. So they're looking at Jonathan David from Ghent and Marco Grujic, who's actually on loan from Liverpool at Hertha. So they'll have a really entertaining squad if those signings go through. And of course, they already have Marco Rose, which I've harped on in the past with regards to this podcast. So I do think that they'll be very competitive next season and a good watch for sure.
I mean, we've seen how Canadians in the Bundesliga have been working out for another club, so why not, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do hope that Dortmund does put in a bid for him, though, because I think he would fit in our squad as well. But
All right. Listen, I'm going to close off this section with a little bit of a conspiracy, Brian. Leverkusen versus Bayern final day. Bayern throw the game. Maybe Leverkusen knock 50 million off Kai Havertz's price. You know what I'm saying? Europe, and we'll let you get our star at a cutthroat price,
The old German mafia jokes, yeah. Okay.
Listen.
So yeah, nice summary from Brian. I really feel sorry for Dortmund because it's an endless pit of despair, I must say, because this was their opportunity. I must remind you guys that before Hansi Flick came in, Bayern were 7th in the league. 7th in the league. I remember thinking that we may not pull this off, and Dortmund and RB Leipzig might get the running on us, but it all comes back to pedigree. Bayern are made of stuff of champions, while Dortmund are made of stuff of runner-up. And it even comes back to when their executive had basically given up the season, even though it still was mathematically possible for them to actually win the league. I found that move is very stupid because you still need to fight. And kid you not, the end result of that, I think they had lost the match and then they had drawn one immediately after that comment was made. And it really proves that you still need to fight, even if it may seem impossible. If it's not mathematically impossible, you still fight. As it relates to Borussia Dortmund and Bayer Leverkusen, I really think that Mönchengladbach should, based on merit, I would actually say, go into the Champions League. They actually deserve it way more than Leverkusen. I think that Leverkusen, if they lose Kai Havertz this season, they might end up being at the Frankfurt next season because a lot was dependent on Havertz for the season. And I really think that they should probably try their best to get David if Havertz leave.
Your patronizing comments are great. Thanks.
Listen, all right, that's the Bundesliga. Quick, you can see the chemistry between our two presenters. All right, Omari, I brought you on this podcast for a reason. Serie A title race is all we're going to talk about because that's what we care about right now. Juventus 66, Lazio 62 with a game in hand with a chance to go to 65. Inter 57. I don't think they're in it, Omari. I'm sorry, but they do have a game in hand, so they would technically go to 60 if they win. I don't think they're in it. I know you think they're in it, but we're gonna, get there. Tell me about this title run-in. Who wins it, and what's going to be the difference between the winner and second place? Like, what's going to be that factor that really pushes them over the line?
Well, honestly speaking, at this point, I'm actually going to say I don't think Inter can take the title. There's a slim chance, but I honestly don't think Juventus is going to slip up. we've seen in years past where teams like Napoli and Roma have literally had one hand on the title, but Juventus was able to hold their nerve coming down to the end of the season. So I actually think the old lady is going to be able to stick to her old habits and lift the title again this year. So at this point, I think the top three race is actually more of a competition to see who are going to be more favored going into next season. Because although Juve are favorites for the title, I think there's many issues within the current squad as well as their performances. They're heavily reliant on Cristiano Ronaldo this season. Their midfield, I wouldn't call it shambles, but their midfield lacks a certain amount of creativity, as well as key players like Pjanic are getting old and may even be moving on. So there's definitely some fixes that need to occur in that Juve team. However, I do think that if Lazio is able to keep their current run of form and Immobile is able to continue running riot across Serie A, given their remaining fixtures, I think there's a chance. The only thing that could possibly hold up Lazio is their next 5 games, which include a visit to Atalanta, which is probably the most free-scoring team outside of Bayern in Europe, home at Fiorentina, away at Torino, who's currently rediscovering some form, and then Milan, which is desperate to prove to its fans that the team still deserves their confidence. So the next 5 games is going to be very key for Lazio if they're able to emerge from that stretch of games with less than one with less than one defeat. The best case scenario for them would be to win everything, because I don't think anyone's expecting Juve to lose more than one game in the next stretch of 5. So at this point, it's a bit defeatist as someone who's been following Serie A for many years. But when you see teams like Juventus, Bayern in positions like this, it's always disheartening, because given the history of the teams, we've seen them make it all the way to the end. So I don't think Inter is going to be able to close that gap, because it would require some severe recklessness and just poor play from Juventus and Lazio as well. I believe Inter pretty much tripped up when they lost that game to Lazio a couple weeks ago. So honestly, for them, I think it's just to continue to build team chemistry, try their best to hold on to Lautaro Martinez and continue to build that partnership that they've got between the two of them, and just to continue to build on the pretty good midfield. I'd say probably one of the best in Serie A, maybe behind Lazio. So if Inter is able to do that, they're gonna be one of the favorites going into next season. But as I said, it's looking like it's another Juve title.
I would actually agree with what Omari said. Juve, and we can see this throughout the European leagues. The teams with the pedigree normally stay at the top, and the teams without normally either pull a surprise, pulling something out, a rabbit out of their hat, or they just fade away. But I can't really see Juve losing it at this point. I think Juve's quality is there to shine through. And they also have the very nice trump card of Cristiano Ronaldo. So, with that being said, I expect a Juventus win in this Serie A.
I could see what you guys are saying there, definitely with regards to Juve and them being expected to win again, especially because they've done it so many years in a row as well. I definitely don't want to think it's a foregone conclusion. I definitely think that Lazio can still pull it off. They have been in good form this season. They've shown that they have what it takes to push Juventus, and they have to play each other still. So that's going to be a big game in itself. One team that I've actually started looking at a little bit more when it comes to Serie A is Napoli. And that race for the European spots is going to be interesting because they're only, I believe it's 3 points off of Roma, and they're coming off a good moment of form as well. They just did win the Coppa Italia, so congrats to them for that. And I think that in itself will be a good morale boost when it comes to fighting for those European spots. So I think they're definitely a team to look out for in terms of getting one of those spots. But as it comes to the title race, once again, I think it'll come down a lot to that game between Juve and Lazio, and which team can pull it off there. That'll definitely be a moment of sway in the league.
I'm saying it. Sorry, Omari. I don't mean to cut in front of you. I'm saying it with my chest. Ciro Immobile fires Lazio to a title, breaks the dynasty up. I said it, and I'm gonna
see it.
I would love to see it. Listen, they have been a really good outfit this year. They've been a really, really good outfit this year. Immobile has scored almost everything put in front of him. Milinkovic-Savic has rediscovered his form that made him noticed by major clubs 2 years ago. Luis Alberto is might be the most underrated or not talked about enough midfield star of this season across like the entire Europe right now. It's fantastic how he's been playing. Felipe Caicedo is a weapon off the bench. They have Luis Felipe and Lucas Leiva doing wonders in defense and midfield, respectively. And Thomas Tarkowska has actually been a really, really good goalkeeper, and he's flown under the radar in Serie A. And I think it's understandable with the big names like Buffon, Handanovic, and so on. But Tarkowska has really given people a chance to see that Lazio have a quality goalkeeper and a good enough defense in front of them. Listen, guys, I understand that it's fair to give the adage to any team that's so successful as Juventus and consistently as successful as Juventus. But I'm in that camp where I feel like I want to see something different this year. Ciro Immobile does it for Lazio is my take on it.
Yeah, it would certainly be magical to see a Ciro Immobile goal or just a win versus Juventus to fire them to the title, especially given that as it stands now, being only 4 points back with a game in hand, that game versus Juventus could be the deciding game. So yeah, I definitely think that would be absolutely magical, amazing to break the stranglehold Juventus has, and it could also fire death blow on the team being Juventus itself, because the Coppa Italia is already in the hands of Napoli, which actually secured them a European spot already. So don't worry about that. And Juve, for them this season, they're definitely gonna have to put all their chips in on the title, because I'm not too confident about them anywhere else. So I would definitely say that it would be magical if Lazio is able to do it, and it could actually mean the start of an entirely new era actually in Serie A, given the fact that so many of the other teams, being teams like Parma and Verona, are performing better. So I would say that it would be interesting, but for some reason, I guess it's just the hope being beaten out of me over the past few years. I still think they're going to be able to hold on. But it's definitely nice to see Immobile in form, scoring well. And yes, as you mentioned, Lazio's midfield and defense has been excellent. And Strakosha, I have to tip my hat to him, because I would say he's the third best, if not, third best goalkeeper in the league this year. And I guess I could be giving some bias to Handanovic, who I have at number 2, but no matter, I would say that it would be good for Lazio, although I don't like the fact that many of the goals have come by way of penalties. But hey, a win is a win, and we're definitely going to see. All eyes are going to be on that match versus Juventus coming up.
All right, that's a Serie A specialist himself, and I'm glad to see that at least one of us, me, thinks that something special is gonna happen with Serie A right now, and it's great to talk about all these leagues with you guys, because it's crazy to think that 2 months ago we had no idea that these seasons were even going to be finished, or that football was even going to come back in any shape or form. So I think to be here today to talk about 4 different leagues right now that we can all watch from the safety of our homes is incredible. And a huge shout out to the restart plans that have been put into place. I've been critical of some of them in the past, and I'm happy to see that I was wrong and that these things have come to fruition, and players are safe, and technical staff and club directors and coaches and stewards and all the relevant people that work with these teams are all safe, and as we navigate our way through this pandemic. Listen, guys, we've taken up a lot of your time, and this is where we're going to wrap up and say it's been a pleasure from all of us to sit here and discuss and debate football, just to present to you guys. And these are our predictions for where these leagues are going to go. There's a lot up for offer in every single league, whether it be the title in some leagues, Champions League, or relegation. There's still a lot to be played, and there's a lot of football coming our way in these coming weeks. And July can't finish soon enough because that means it's August and the Champions League is going to be back, which I know all of us looking forward to. So in the near future, look forward to some sort of Champions League preview from us, something where we cast an eye on what this new format is going to be and who it favors. So this is me, Shevin and Ryan, saying thank you for you guys and thankful as always for your time. And these are my panelists.
Michael Philander, again from Georgetown. My Twitter handle is Philander003. You can catch me there.
Brian Straub over here, also on Twitter, Brian E Media 1.
Omari Joseph, aka the Unspecialist, Instagram, Twitter, at the Unspecialist.
All right. This has been another episode of Corner Flag Convos and Chips, guys. This is Shevin and Ryan signing out. Take care.